What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So now that free agency is in the books, I've given my way too early top 10, way too early bottom 10. I thought I'd do another video kind of in that same vein and give you the teams that I think are going to be the most improved or regress the most relative to their point total last year. This isn't just going to be in terms of improving or falling off with the roster talent, although that definitely factors into whether I think you're going to improve or regress. It's going to be based on what your point total was last year. Because, for example, a team like the Washington Capitals, I think they're going to be in the playoff hunt. I think they did improve a lot with their roster, but last year they also just far exceeded expectations, getting to 91 points when basically all the regular and advanced stats had them as like a bottom 8 team in the entire NHL. They're now a legit team that's going to be in the playoff hunt, but I don't think they're going to be like a 100-plus point team. We're going to be doing this based on how much I think they're going to improve relative to their point total last year. So without further ado, let's get into it. And my first most improved team is the Utah Hockey Club. They had a clear objective to beef up their blue line. It was arguably a bottom 5, maybe even bottom 3 with like the Blackhawks and the San Jose Sharks as one of the worst defense cores in the entire NHL. They had Sean Thursey as their number 1, Juuso Valmaki, who I think is a very underrated player, as their number 2. It was just not that imposing. What did they do? They go out and get Mikhail Sergachev. Will he be an $8.5 million guy coming off that leg injury? I'm not sure, but he definitely is an upgrade over some of the guys that they had, on top of John Marino, also traded for him on day 2. Ian Cole, although he had a pretty rough playoffs, especially against the Edmonton Oilers, I think he can be a solid veteran presence. And then they also have Dursey, who is a very good offensive defenseman, Valmaki, who I think, again, is pretty solid, as well as Michael Kesselring, who is a 24-year-old guy that actually was very, very good for the Utah Hockey Club last year. So when looking at them, I think that now they have an okay defense core on top of having a very young and exciting forward core led by veterans. Nick Schmaltz and Clayton Keller are basically veterans on that forward core, as well as Logan Cooley, Dylan Gunther, Josh Doan, Michelli, all should take another positive step this year. Do I think that they're going to be a safe playoff team? No, but I think they are. From 77 points, I think they're going to go to at least 85 points. Something would have gone pretty wrong if they're not at least an 85-point team next year. And right now, if I had to peg them, I'd peg them at like 90 points, I'd say right now. They're going to be in the mix. They're going to be playing important games come early April, so I'm very excited to see what the Utah Hockey Club does. The goaltending is going to be massive. Obviously, this most recent year, Ingram really soared, but Vegemelka kind of fell off. They both need to bring at least their B-plus game to next year, and the Utah Hockey Club should have a pretty solid goalie tandem for next season. My first team that I think is going to regress, the Winnipeg Jets. Now, again, this is more so similarly to Washington Capitals. They overachieved by a decent amount last season. They got 110 points. They were the 4th best team in the entire regular season, but I do think that they are going to fall off a little bit. I'd still have them in the playoffs, but probably like 98 to 100 points, maybe a little bit better than they were in 2023. But when looking at the team that they're rolling out next season, it's still very impressive, but we don't know what's going to happen with Nikolai Ehlers. I think if they do trade him, they're not going to get a player as good as him. They lost Brendan Dillon. Toffoli and Monahan were trade deadline acquisitions, but they both lost them. Laurent Brossoit, I think, is a pretty big loss, although I don't even know who they're running out as their backup. Like Eric Comrie? Yeah, that's pretty big, considering Brossoit gave him like a 920 in 25 games. And Connor Hellebuck, I don't think that he's going to play to the level that he did this year yet again, win another Vezina. I'd expect him to have a little bit of a come down year. So I still think that they're going to be a playoff team, but 110 points, that's a little bit ambitious for me. So I think they are going to fall off by 8 to 12 points next season. I don't think is ridiculous. Improvement for the New Jersey Devils is inevitable at this point. They don't improve on their 81 points next year. Fitzgerald's getting fired. Sheldon Keefe might get fired after his first goddamn year. This team is just up, down, up, down. Was it 2022? They had like 60 points. Then they went for 112. Then they went for 81. And I think they're going to bounce back and be somewhere between 100, 105. I do think, considering they address goaltending with Jacob Markstrom, that's going to be massive for them, on top of the defense core. No like massive ads, but I think Brendan Dillon and Brett Pesce are pretty big upgrades for their defense core. I think that they're just going to be a better team as long as the goaltending can hold up to a degree. Markstrom is pretty volatile with his play over the last couple of years, but overall, the New Jersey Devils should, in terms of the top 5 teams that improved the most point over point, I would put my goddamn life savings on them if that was the kind of bet that I could make. Staying in the Metro Division, I got the Carolina Hurricanes, similarly to the Winnipeg Jets, 110 points last year. Well, with the Hurricanes, with the Jets, I think it's more so just some guys are going to have down years, and they did lose some pieces. Carolina obviously lost a lot, and I do like how they tried to replace it with some cheap deals like Shane Gothisbehere, Sean Walker, and Paul Cotter. But when looking at it, again, Lost Jake Gensel. He was a trade deadline guy, but Teravainen, Shea, and Pesci, those are pretty big pieces. I still think that they are going to be a playoff team. Don't get me wrong, but 110 points seems a little bit tough for them to get to next season, especially considering the New Jersey Devils are on the come up, especially considering the Washington Capitals should be a better team in the Metro Division. I think my Islanders are going to be better. Columbus should be better. Philadelphia might fall off a little bit. But when looking at it, I think Carolina, similarly to the Winnipeg Jets, I'd have them at around 102 points. Rod Brind'Amour is such a good coach that they're probably going to be a playoff team, but 110 fighting for the President's Trophy in the final weeks of the season. I would be quite shocked if that's the position that they were in come April. Next up, in terms of improvement, got to have the Chicago Blackhawks in here. They're probably the odds on them, and the New Jersey Devils would be like my two bets in terms of the teams that I think would improve the most over their point totals last year. 52 points last season. They're going to get at least 65 considering all the moves like a TJ Brody, like an Alec Martinez, Tyler Bertuzzi, Teravainen, as well as Connor Bedard taking another step, Korchinski, all of that. They're going to be a far better team. They got Laurent Brossoit from the Winnipeg Jets. He's going to form a pretty decent goalie tandem with Petr Mrazek. So when looking at Chicago, I'd say they're probably going to be like a mid 70-ish point team, I think, heading into next season. In my bottom 10, I had them in 5th, ahead of the Ducks, ahead of the Anaheim Ducks, ahead of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and ahead of another team that we're going to get to on this list. I won't spoil it. Actually, this team is up next now that I look at it. The Calgary Flames had 81 points last season. They sold so heavily at the deadline, so just going into this offseason, we kind of expected them to fall off a decent amount. Then they trade Mangiapane. They trade Jacob Markstrom. Their only big signing is signing Anthony Mantha. None of their prospects are really projected to make a massive impact next year at the NHL level, so this team should probably go to the basement of the NHL. I mean, last year they were tied for like the 8th worst record, but I think next year that 81 is probably going to become a 71, could even creep into the 60s if they yet again even trade some more pieces at the deadline. A guy like Kuzmenko is a pending UFA. Rasmus Anderson only has 2 years left. There's a lot of moves that Craig Conroy can do in terms of taking this rebuild even further. So I think the Calgary Flames are going to be one of the worst teams in the entire NHL, and I'm sure Calgary Flames fans love to hear that. I'm sure they're happy and excited to be one of the worst teams in the league next season. Next up, in terms of improvement, the Ottawa Senators, 78 points last year. That's why I have them here. I'm not saying that they're going to be better than the Red Wings, than the Buffalo Sabres before you come for me. I'm not saying that they're going to be a playoff lock, but I do think that they're at least going to be in the mix. A 10-point improvement would have them in the mix, but still miss the playoffs by like 3 to 6 points. 88 points, I think, is realistic for Ottawa. I think 90 points, I think they could make a playoffs. But when looking at it, the fact that they addressed the goaltending in a big way, I don't love the Chychrun trade, but I think Jensen is definitely more of a fit on the right side instead of kind of throwing Chychrun on that right side, pairing him with like Thomas Chabot. It just never really worked. So when looking at it, I think for the Ottawa Senators, they should improve next year, and Steve Staios definitely has high expectations. The rebuild should be over by now. So although I'm not saying that Ottawa is going to be a safe playoff team like I did last year, I haven't come to my full consensus on what the standings are going to look like next year. They definitely should improve to at least their 2023 form where they were an 86-point team. I don't think that's ridiculous. Ottawa should take another step, a step this season, not another step. Just get back to where they were in at least 2023 and make at least an 8-point jump to 86 points. I don't think that's absolutely ridiculous. The St. Louis Blues, 92 points last year. I think they're going to come back down a little bit. I've said this ad nauseum, but the goaltending, they had a top 5, arguably like top 3 goalie tandem in the entire NHL in terms of stats. Do I think Hoffer and Binnington are going to be a top 5 goalie tandem in the entire NHL next year? No, that's why I have them, in my opinion, regressing down to like an 80, 82 point team. I think with the Central Division, it's going to be a pretty damn good division, especially with Utah getting a lot better, as well as just, I'm not liking the St. Louis Blues defense score. It has been a below average defense score. It got bailed out by the goaltending this season. So I think next season that is not going to be the case, and the St. Louis Blues are going to fall off by around like 10 points. San Jose, in terms of improvement, this is kind of a no-brainer, similarly to Chicago. Although they didn't make as many moves as Chicago, they were one of the worst teams of like the 21st century. They had 47 goddamn points. So when looking at it, Toffoli and Wenberg aren't the most juicy ads. Actually, Toffoli's kind of a stud. But when looking at it, those guys are going to be immediate impact, top of the lineup guys, as well as Celebrini and Will Smith, considering the way that they dominated college. 2 of the best players in the entire NCAAs. They should walk in and be solid top 6 forwards. They got a guy like Jake Wallman. The goalie tandem's not going to be good, but I think Blackwood maybe could spark some New Jersey magic. He showed real flashes at times, especially at the start of the season last year. So I think the San Jose Sharks probably going to be easily the worst team in the entire NHL. But if they get to low 60s points, that's a 15-point goddamn improvement. So they were just so bad last year that I think that they are going to be one of the most improved teams kind of naturally as a result. And then lastly, this is going to piss off some people, but I got the New York Rangers in terms of regression because they won the President's Trophy. They had 114 points. I still think that they're going to be probably like a 104-point team, but that would be a 10-point fall off. I don't think Artemi Panarin is going to have a top 5 season in the entire NHL. Yes, maybe Shesterkin might play better next season. He was pretty below average in the first half, but great in the second half. I don't think Jonathan Quick is the most volatile goalie of all time. I think he's going to have a bit of a down year, as well as just some of their other guys. I don't know if Trocheck's going to be point per game. Maybe Lafreniere takes that step. But I think New York's still going to be a very good team, but it's just unrealistic to think that they're going to be yet again at the top of the standings, yet again over 10 points. You just don't see that often. I don't think they're going to care as much about the regular season. I still think that they're a safe playoff team, but I think that they're going to be somewhere in the hundreds instead of 114 points. But yeah, let me know in the comments. What do you think? Those are my top 5 in terms of most improved or regression this season. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? I'll be seeing you in the next one.